welcome back to our channel. Today we'll be taking a closer look at the Donald Trump campaign policies. We'll be dissecting and analyzing the various claims of the Trump campaign. We'll be doing this for everyone running for president. We'll be not talking about the Trump indictments or any other allegations in this video. We may in the future, if enough people will request it. We will see if there's any research supporting policies, suggestions, or when he was in office, what effect that his policies had for the United States and the American people. The very first issue on the Donald Trump campaign website is called "Rebuild the Greatest Economy in History." And I quote, President Donald J. Trump passed record-setting tax relief for the middle class, doubled the child tax credit, slashed more job-killing regulations than any administration has ever done before. Real wages quickly increased, and as a result, median household income reached highest levels in the history of our country, while poverty reached a record low. President created 9,000 economic opportunity zones to revitalize neglected communities. President Trump produced a booming economic recovery, record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, and women. Joe Biden, the destroyer of American jobs, and continues to fuel runaway inflation with reckless big government spending. President Trump's vision for America's economic revival is lower taxes, bigger paychecks, and more jobs for American workers. Okay, now let's take apart each individual claim and see what they've actually done for us. President Donald Trump passed record-setting tax relief for the middle class. It's true. The Trump administration, the Republicans, did pass tax reform in 2017 for the middle class and all the wealthiest, but the middle class tax cuts are set to expire by 2025. On top of that, the tax cuts, according to the Tax Policy Center, from a paper published in December 2017. In 2018, only 54% of the bottom income quintile would actually receive a tax cut, compared to 91% of the top 1% income distribution. As you can see from this chart, and then by the end of 2025, most of the tax cuts are set to expire, thus changing only 50% of the bottom quintile will actually get the tax cut, and 85% for the top 1% income earners. It's pretty clear to see who the tax cuts are made for: the elites and the 1% of America, not actually the working class. And we all know trickle-down economics doesn't really work. It just systematically expands income inequality, but that's a whole different video. Okay, let's go to the next point. From the Center of Policy and Budget Research, we can see the 2017 tax law increased the maximum value of the child tax credit, first enacted to help working class offset the cost of raising children, $1,000 to $2,000 per child. But the low-income working class families are largely missing out on the full CTC increase. For starters, 11 million children under the 17 in the lowest income bracket working families, who under the prior law received only a partial CTC or no credit at all, either receives no improvement in their credit or a token increase of $1 to $75. 15 million children in low-income and modest-income working families get a CTC increase of more than 75, but far less in many cases of the full $1,000 per child increase that the families of higher income get. The Trump administration did actually cut taxes and double child tax credit, but the unforeseen side effects of the change is that over 26 million children from low-income families would only benefit around $1 to $75 instead of the promised $2,000 per child. Will increase instead of the promised $1,000, but because they don't actually make enough to receive the tax credit. On the other hand, the high-income earners will see the full benefit of the tax credit and the increase of $1,000 per child. As you can see, him claiming to help the middle class, it only really helps the already wealthy, and not the actually truly struggling Americans. So far as tax policies, hasn't really done jack shit for the average American, and the little benefit we do get is going to expire in like 2 years from now. We'll see. Well, we did see. It doesn't help anyone but the wealthy. Now let's see the massive effect Trump's deregulation has done for America. On May 24th, 2018, Trump signed into law the Economic Growth, Regulatory Relief, and Customer Protection Act. The purpose of the act is to remove Dodd-Frank regulations on banks with less than $250 billion in assets, removing them from systematic important financial institutions, or SIF's designation. The next important change is any bank with less than $100 billion in assets are no longer affected by the enhanced potential standards imposed by the SIFSIs under Section 165 of the Dodd-Frank Act. They also removed the stress testing by the Federal Reserve. Since the passing of the act from October 2020 to March 2023, we've seen 867 bank failures. Now we're spending billions bailing out the banks again, all because of de-bank regulations. We let the banks go wild, and they really did. They're all failing again, and now they need a government bailout. This was the whole point of the Dodd-Frank Act imposed after the 2009 recession, the 2008 financial crisis. Now let's talk about the rolling back of environmental regulations. The Trump administration has rolled back more than 112 regulations from clean air, water, wildlife, and toxic chemicals. We won't know the full scale impact on American health and environment for years to come. We've already seen all the various different ecological disasters with the trains derailments in Ohio, the various poisonings of water supplies, the wildfires going across California every year. Let's get into the next point. Real wages quickly increased as a result of median household income reached the highest level in the history of our country, while poverty reached a record low. It is true, real wages and the real median household income increased, but you'll see the peaks are during the height of the pandemic, when Trump COVID policies increased unemployment benefits and the stimulus checks, causing a bump in the graph. Otherwise, as following a trend continued from Obama. So it is true, but it was only a temporary boost to a once in a lifetime economic crisis, with like once in a lifetime stimulus and money pumped into the economy. Even though the real and median income peaked in 2019, you could see it seemed to be steadily increasing since 2014 in the Obama era. So yeah, it's true. While reaching record low poverty, that isn't true. During the late 60s and 70s, had the lowest amount of people in poverty. Besides the COVID spending lowering the poverty rate, it was just continued steady decrease since the President Obama. President Trump created 9,000 opportunity zones to revitalize communities. President Trump has produced a booming economy, recovery, and record low unemployment for Asians, African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans, and women. Yeah, unemployment did reach an all-time low for all the different races in 2019. Then it spiked due to COVID again. But let's talk about the Opportunity Zone, what it is, and why it only really exists to help rich people avoid paying taxes and robbing the government from much-needed funds to actually help people. It's just another rebrand of the trickle-down economics. So basically, you would invest in an OZ, aka economic zone. You wouldn't have to pay capital gain taxes for after 10 years, and some other states have different rules where the taxes would be lower if you invested between like 5, 10, 15 years. Between like around 5 years or so, 7 years, that sort of. But instead of having the desired effect increasing employment in new businesses and reducing poverty, increasing investments in startups, none of this actually happened. Instead, the money was mostly used in corrupt dealings with state governors designating areas that are represented by their own political party. And even then, they tend to target the high-income areas of the OZs. It actually caused housing prices to skyrocket in OZs that are especially in the parts that are lower income, because it's easier way for the wealthy to buy cheap properties and hoard them or build luxury real estate, making some regions basically unaffordable to the lower-class residents, greatly benefiting the landlords and the Wall Street investors. The higher-end sections of the OZ seeing the most benefit, and only basically benefiting a few people. Great success if you have capital and you already owned your house and you saw a bunch of landlords and Wall Street investors coming in. On top of that, the law doesn't force any disclosure on who's taking advantage of the program and the tax breaks, because it can only help and target about 7% of the population who has an income over $1 million. So that's why the Trump and why the Trump administration went straight to Wall Street to sell their idea to invest in these OZs and economic opportunity zones. Joe Biden is the destroyer of jobs and continues to fuel runaway inflation with reckless government spending. Donald Trump increased the national debt by over $8 trillion in 4 years, which is a 40% increase in national debt. Biden's only added $2.5 trillion to national debt and has reduced the deficit. So wouldn't it mean Trump's responsible for the runaway inflation by this logic? But it's still only 2023. I'm sure Biden can pump those numbers up. President Trump has a vision for economic revival, as lower taxes, bigger paychecks, and more jobs for American workers. As we've seen so far, Trump's programs only benefit one group of Americans, the wealthy. Every policy so far is about removing money from the government and giving it to the elites and the work, basically going in, robbing the working class, and polluting the water, sea, and air. Does Trump actually care about Americans in working class environments? Clearly, no. He cares about the Wall Street investors, his friends. Next, we'll be looking at the issues for the next issue on the Trump campaign. And that's fair trade for the American worker in the next video, because it's already getting pretty long enough. I don't want this video to be fucking 3 hours, so this is only part 1 in the series. I'm going to try to make the other ones way shorter. Well, I'm going to Alright, thank you for subscribing. Bye.